originally I started as a cleaning company many years ago. Then I saw the opportunity in real estate at that early stage. So I went into property management. So I started managing properties for people, and I said, one day I will own mine.
Hey, welcome everyone to the live webinar today and also live podcast recording. And right now we're talking about the building the American dream through real estate investing. And it may shock you to learn that you cannot build the American dream financial freedom through single family house investing. I've tried, maybe you have as well. What happens is many people start with single family house investing and then they end up pivoting to apartment buildings. And that's what we're going to talk about today, all about investing in apartment buildings. We're going to focus today on the acquisition process. We're going to walk you through, finding the right market, generating deal flow, doing due diligence, negotiating, and then closing it and then cashing your acquisition check. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to focus on the acquisition process. So important, obviously, to focus on that because the law of the first deal is real. You have to focus on getting your first deal done. Today, our guest on the show is Bibi Ofiri. She's a COO of Blue Ocean Equity, and she's flipped a bunch of houses like so many of us, and so did I. And she finally woke up one day and said, that's not gonna get me there. We're gonna talk about that here as well. And she's got a master's degree. That's interesting, Bibi, like I have, and I duly threw it away for real estate. But she's been in asset management for many years, overseeing business operations, and she's also the co-author of two amazing, also Amazon bestsellers. Bibi, welcome very much to the show today. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Michael, for inviting me.
Yes, it's going to be great to talk about your journey because so many of us read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which you have, I'm sure. So Bibi, it's great to have you on the show here today. And it's like so many of us, I'm sure you have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? And so if you're like me, you're like, oh, financial freedom, real estate. You're like, oh, what should I do? I don't know. Everyone's flipping houses. I guess I'll just flip houses. Like, talk about when you read that book and you got into flipping houses, like what was your thought right there? Like what were you trying to do when you started investing in real estate?
I didn't know what I was doing. I dabbled into it. I dabbled into fix and flip. I thought it was a very fast way of making bulk money. You just get a dilapidated house, you repair it, and you flip it. So I was after the money, but I didn't know there was other better ways of doing it. So I kept doing it, and it felt like routine. I kept doing it, always with my contractors, and it felt like a second job. So yeah.
That's so funny you say that. It's funny. I don't know why we do that, Bibi. I read the same book you did, and we started flipping houses. And it took me. You said 2 dozen. Took me 3 dozen to figure out that it was insanity, because flipping houses. There's nothing passive about it. Now the good thing is, it's adrenaline, right? Every time adrenaline is very transactional, and you are making chunks of money. But I don't know what my problem was because nothing about it was passive.
Yes, truth be told, nothing about it was passive, but I felt it's the knowledge we had at that time. I think that was the understanding I had at that time. So I decided to just take the bold step. Do I regret it? I don't think I do, because it just opened up the opportunity for me to look for something else better.
Let me challenge that. And I don't like regret either, because through things that you've done that are negative and bad, you learn. Okay, but check it out. My regret is not having someone around me that could have guided me on my journal of financial freedom, because what I did is I did a whole bunch of stuff. I got into restaurants and I flipped a bunch of houses. I traded stocks and options, right? And what I never did is I never actually sat someone down who was financially free. Like I finally started doing when I wrote my book and then a podcast. And these interviews blew my mind because the pattern was always the same. Oh, I did a bunch of single family houses, rentals, flips, whatever. And then I realized it was too much work and I couldn't get there. And then I was lost, and I discovered, and within a year, I'm financially free. Like, I never did that. And I think my biggest regret is not surrounding myself with the right people, because why should I learn on the job? Why should I reinvent the wheel? Why not borrow someone else's experience?
Exactly the point. I was saying this at our earlier conversation. Your net worth is your network. I mean, your who you know are the people that will take you to your next level. So I think I surrounded myself around the same set of people that did not know the next step and all that. So I think with time, I was looking for something else. And I think that was when I started looking for you. I didn't know you existed. I just looked for a better way of doing things, and I saw you. And I think that was a turning point. The community is very important. Being around the right set of people, those type of things can take you to your next level.
Now, what were you doing before you got into flipping houses? What was your background, job, or anything like that?
Yes, I'm originally from Nigeria. You can hear from my accent, so it's very strong. So I came into the country just to go back, but something happened. So originally I started as a cleaning company many years ago. Then I saw the opportunity in real estate at that early stage. So I went into property management. So I started managing properties for people, and I said, one day I will own mine. So that was just the thing about it. So when I moved into the US, I lost focus for a while because I was trying to survive. So I just picked up different things. I even went further by doing my master's. I was thinking that was going to bring about the financial freedom I was looking for. So I did my master's. Then when I was about wrapping up, I just got uncomfortable with the achievement. I said, this is not me. I actually studied information systems with cybersecurity, a good course that could give me good money. But
Yeah.
I said, this is not me. I always wanted to be into real estate, but how do I start? And what even made the turning point for me at that point was when my mom lost her house. We lost 4 homes because my parents have been in the US for years. So they were able to get four buildings. And in a space of after my dad died, we lost everything. So that was a turning point. I didn't know how to help. I didn't know how to save. I was pregnant with my second child, and I was given a letter and said, your house is foreclosed. You have 1 month to leave. And I was like, what do I do? I was confused in a state of no help and all that. So I think that was the thing that started making me look for better option.
Okay, well, that's man, that does not sound good at all. But how did you get from that point to, let's say doing your first transaction? I mean, your first single family house transaction. How do you get from that point to actually flipping or buying your first house?
I think it was the mindset. I knew that I was not comfortable with where I was at all. So I started first of all with the long cut. I did it a long route, which I would not encourage anyone to do. So I started becoming uncomfortable. I started thinking, this is not the plan, because I already had a plan. I wanted to go into real estate a long time, but I was like, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. So that was when I started, and I fix and flip was the easiest way at that time because that's what I knew to go into. So someone invited me to Pennsylvania to come and check out a 5 unit property. So myself and my business partner, we went there, we saw it, and I was super excited. And they showed me the rent, and I was like, oh, this looks more stable and all that. And but the deal didn't close. We went back. But what we did was we created a relationship. We created a relationship with the broker, and the broker kept calling us. And all of a sudden, he had an off-market deal. It was an 18 unit, and he called us and said if we're interested. We traveled down with little knowledge. We didn't know how to do so many things. So we literally learned on the job. And the good thing was that it was with our money. We didn't have investors but I wish we had done things better. Maybe we would have negotiated the price well. We'd have done more due diligence on that property because we ended up spending a lot to bring it up to standard because there were a lot of capex things we would have asked the seller to do, but we didn't know anything. So we just started, and I started looking for. I started with doing it before looking for education, and that is not the right way to do in order to avoid mistakes. So I should have looked for education first, then start looking for the deal. But I did it the other way around, and it cost me money.
Yeah, well, let's get back to that mistake that I made as well. But how did you finance these early flips? Because they take money. Did you have money saved at that point through a job, or did you use hard money, or how did you finance them?
Like I said, relationship, your network. So I had a business partner,
Mm.
someone that had a lot of money, and I kind of convinced him to come into real estate. So it was like my silent partner
I see.
And I brought him into it. I didn't have the money. A single dime was not, I didn't have a single dollar to my name, but he had the funds and I was willing to do the job. And that was how we partnered. And here we are.
All right. So you're a broke mom, all right? Why
Yes.
would this person with money take you seriously?
Oh, it was consistency. It was not an easy task. It took me 1 year to convince him. I had to,
So
he
it
gave
wasn't easy. You're saying it, there was actually work involved.
it wasn't easy. It was a lot of work involved. He saw the determination and the consistency, and he said, "Okay, I am going to go slow and steady, and let's see." So it was a fix and flip we started together, and he saw how the returns we got with that, and he was willing to give me more opportunity, and that was how we were able to do the multifamily at that point.
That's amazing. All right. So fast forward now, because we want to talk about multifamily acquisitions. You obviously did a bunch of flips there. They made you some good money. And then you realize that there's a lot of work. And if you stop
Yep,
flipping, you stop earning. And it is difficult to scale. And
yep,
so you finally switched to multifamily. Talk
yes.
about what that transition looked like. Like in my case, I literally there's only one. I had maybe 20 investors on the house flips, and I'd raised money for. Of those 20, only one went with me into the multifamily. It's a different beast. There's a 5-year hold. They don't get their money back in 6 months, and there was like, no, I'm out. So I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get into a whole new. It's a whole different ball game. And how was that transition for you?
Yeah, for me, it was overwhelming at the beginning because I didn't even know where to start from. I was confused. I was always on YouTube looking for informations and all that. So it was a confusing state for a period of time. I didn't know how to, one, I thought to myself that I couldn't raise money. I thought to myself that I couldn't manage assets. I thought to myself so many things, so many beliefs that I had at that time. So what I now did was I said, okay, first of all, I just need to know this thing. The more I know, the more confident I'll become and all that. So the transition, to answer your question, the transitioning period was very challenging because I didn't know anything. But the moment I decided I was going to get more information and I was going to look for someone that was going to help me in doing that and being among a community that can do that, that was the transformation at
So
that time.
you've done a number of deals. So let's get to
Yep.
the kind of more of the heart of the matter here, because people are always saying, well, how do I find deals? How do I close deals? So let's go through the whole thing. And so we don't have a lot of time. We're not going to cover the topic in incredible detail, but I do want you to kind of talk about the highlights
Mhm.
and maybe talk about the things to really pay attention to in each stage. So let's start with finding and selecting a market. Like, what is really important about doing that? How do you kind of go about doing it?
Okay, for me, the first step I try to do is the location. Location is very important. I take a deep dive into the location. And what am I looking for? I'm looking for the market, the demand, the supply. I'm looking for what is it, the population, what exactly is happening there. And the reason why I'm doing that is because without people, your property will be empty. So I'm looking for a place where there's a demand for whatever I'm supplying to that place. So that's number one. The second thing I'm doing at that point is I'm also checking the market trend. What exactly is going on in that market? So for example, when I wanted to go into the PA deal, really, I started digging deep. I was like, why is this market not that attractive to so many people? Because I know because it's a blue state and all that and rules. So what I did was to dive deep. I narrowed it down to a smaller area. I didn't want to make it a broader view because real estate is very local. So that's what I did. I had to narrow it down to a portion or an area, not the entire state, to see, okay, how does this apply to my need? Because already I was in that market without even knowing. So I just had to see, is it really something I should continue with? So the first thing is I look at the location, the market, then I start to look for relationships I can create in there. Very important, because if you don't have the right property manager and you don't have the right, you don't have a relationship with a broker or anybody that can help you there, that might be very challenging. So those are things I first of all look at.
Well, okay, so maybe we skipped a step here, but you talked about relationships with brokers and property managers. So, all right, so let's back up just a second before we get to the market selection. It sounds to me like you put together some kind of team. Talk about putting together a team before you kind of get started.
Yes, that was the first thing I did, because I knew, one, that I didn't have all the ability. I started treating multifamily as a business, in the sense that I knew that I didn't have that capacity. I can't be 10 people, because the role is just very different, and I don't have everything that it takes. So the first thing I did was to create the relationship. First of all, I created with the broker. I started creating different relationships with brokers. Initially, some of them didn't take me very serious, but I didn't stop. Recently I started asking about feedback on how it was when I first of all called them, and it was a funny experience when I had to have that conversation with them. How was it when I had the first call I made with you? Did you take me serious? And they were like, not really, we didn't take you serious and all that. But consistency, I started creating those relationships with the broker, with the loan broker as well, with the insurance broker, with the property manager. I spent days looking for property managers. That took me time to get one.
Yeah, so it's really important that you have your team built, because, for example, when we're going to get to underwriting deals here in just a second, but you need to have property managers and lenders on your team. And the other one you mentioned was brokers. So let's talk about deal flow, right? Deal flow. How are you getting deal flow? I mean, a lot of people say, well, okay, we'll go to the MLS, or they'll go on LoopNet, and that may have some results, but what is really the secret to getting deal flow?
Relationship with brokers is the secret of doing that. You have to have that relationship. They will give you deals initially, any deal, they will give it to you, but there are some very private deals that you don't even hear about. Those are the deals that you should be looking for. And it's when you've created that relationship that you can get those deals. And the relationship comes sometimes with proof of concept. So it's a consistent thing. It's not a one-day thing. So the more you do it, the more they get comfortable with you.
So how do you build a relationship with brokers, right? Because the thing is, when you've never done an apartment building deal and you're calling a broker, you're very nervous because you don't have a track record.
Exactly.
And that is true, but how do you build trust with a broker? How do you get to the point where they're taking you seriously, and at one point actually give you access to off-market deals? Like, what are some of the tactics or ways that you do that?
Oh, sometimes you have to go. I had to involve someone that was already into it to make that call, and I'll be on the call, listening to the conversation, because at the beginning I did not know those terms. So you can go there and start making some errors. So one of the things I did was to involve someone that was already into it to make that call while I listened to the conversation. Another thing I did was I started calling in markets like California. I was based in California at some point. So I was making those errors there, calling, making the blunders I needed to make in those markets before, because I knew I was not going to invest in California. So I made those blunders there, started building myself and courage before I started calling in the market I wanted to invest in, which is Dallas and Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we call it the throwaway market, actually, the throwaway market, where you're calling into a market that you don't intend to buy anything in, and you can make the worst first impression ever, and it's not a big deal. So that's great that you did that. That's a great way to kind of practice, if you will. So brokers is a secret. Again, coming from a single family house investing background, that's not intuitive, because everything's on the MLS, and we would make offers on houses we haven't seen, and it just doesn't work that way. Then we send yellow letters or put up bandit signs, and it just doesn't work. I've talked to a number of people who try to send out letters, and it just doesn't produce results, because it is a relationship game. And so
Exactly.
an owner of a 20, 50, 100 unit building is not going to call on a fast close, all cash card they get in the mail. It's just, they're more sophisticated. Now the other thing is, when you're generating deal flow, right? At one point, the broker is going to put you on their list, and they're going to start sending you deals. What do you do with these deals? And of course, not only how did you respond to deals, but eventually you have to analyze these deals and try to make offers. So talk about analyzing deals. What's important in this stage?
The thing is, the time I get to give them feedback is very important.
Okay.
So I spent time trying to, even if they did not work out well, or I didn't like it or something, I always give them 24 hours feedback. And that was really good. I found out that they started taking me serious. How I got to know that that was very key and important was when I somehow did not respond back to a broker. It took me like 4 days or more. And he said, Bibi, you used to get back to me on time. What happened? Yeah, so that was when I knew that. I said, oh, okay, so you're taking note of my feedback time. And he said, yes, we like people that take us serious because these things, we don't want to waste time. So if you're serious, let us know on time. So that is one. And the deal flow two is, again, I give them reasons why the deal is not working. So I aside from typing or sending emails, I jump on a call with them. And I go through those underwriting and I say, I checked the expenses. There's something off here. Can you tell me exactly? I don't make them look like they don't know what they're doing. I just make them look like, is it possible I'm missing something? So in that way, you're making them inclusive. I'm including them in the conversation. And it's possible they're not aware or they're aware and they say, oh, you noticed. I say, yes, I noticed it and all that. So I try to bring them in that conversation and we get to go back and forth and they tell me, yes, you're right, but the seller might not even accept that offer. So I get to know many things by engaging them on the phone. I could easily type a message, but phone call sometimes just helps me as well.
Yeah, so I think feedback is quick feedback is a great way to build relationship, as you've just talked about here today. You have some kind of good financial analysis tool that you use for this. We have the syndicated deal analyzer, which a lot of people use. And it's all well. You do need a good, strong financial model. The problem is you can make your financial model say anything you want. How do you know the numbers you put in are actually based in reality?
Yes. So how do I know that is, first of all, because I have a relationship with a local property manager and I understand that market. Let's assume I've been in that market or I've not been in that market at all, but I have a relationship with a local property manager. I try to look for their own perspective. Yes, this is mine. Then I look for theirs. And I also look for the perspective of a loan broker because I also want to know how the lender is going to underwrite my deal and the kind of debt is going to give to me. So I break it down into those three ways. So I get the lender's perspective, I get the property manager's perspective, and I put my own. Then so I kind of go in between and say, okay, this looks like it and all that. So that is how I know I'm putting in the right numbers.
So we go back to your team. Okay. This is why I went back a step before picking your market, because you can't really start without a team. And this is a perfect example of that, because how do you know what you're going to put in for expenses? Unless you're an expert in the local market, how do you know what the rent projections are going to be? Like, how are you going to know that? Well,
You can't.
You can't. You have to call your property manager and you say, hey, help me with this. And then how are you going to know what to put in your loan terms, like interest rate, amortization, down payment, all these things? Like, you don't. I mean, you can make something up. So you have to have a lender on your team as well. This is why the team is so important. And that's how, a lot of people say, oh, I'm just going to go on Rentometer or I'm going to go online. And that's great, but it's not really good enough, right? You really need to lean on your team. So
yes, you
really
have
important.
to really lean on your team because there was a deal at the beginning, a deal fell off. I couldn't go forward with the deal because I didn't get a loan quote from a lender. And when I was
Right.
ready to, it didn't pan out well because the leverage I was getting was not good. So
Yeah. Yeah. And the deal doesn't work, right? So you have to work that into the underwriting. Otherwise, you can't really make an offer. And by the way, I think, especially in times like this right now, the person with a better debt wins, right? If I can get even 5% more leverage than you can, or anything like that, I'm more competitive. And it's been like that for a long time. So really networking with loan brokers is a really, really important. So you're analyzing deals. Okay. So you're getting back with a broker, you say, hey, this won't work for me. The expenses are a little low. If I adjust them, to what it should be, more like 55% of income, based on the cap rate, then, we're more in the ballpark of this price, right? And now we're getting into negotiation. What are some important points around negotiation?
yeah, so some of the points that I used to do my negotiation is I try to tell them the strength of the team. Because regardless of you giving them the right numbers and all that, they also want to know you can close. So I do a package. So in that package, it's like I'm giving you a summary of the team. They're seeing pictures, they're seeing the assets that they own, the experience that they have. And also in my LOI, which is the letter of intent, I also indicate a short close. That is if I have the ability or I see that the deal I can actually close in a short time. So all these things is, I call it packaging. So I package I just don't hand over letter of intent to them that I want to buy your property. I go further by telling them about the team. But it's when they see the team, they take me serious and they say, okay, I feel these guys can close a deal and all that. So that's what I do.
I think it's critical, and I don't know if you're watching, listening to this, the word team keeps coming up all the time. Okay. You got to build a team. If you call a broker without a team, guess what they're going to say? They're going to say, send me your proof of funds. That's what they're going to say, because they're going to make you go away because you appear like a tire kicker. And so your team comes into play through the entire process. And so you use the leverage, because you're right, because a seller wants to know, can you close this deal? And it's not always the highest prices, but their biggest concern is, can you close? And how can you convince them you can close if you've never done a deal before? You don't have a track record. Well, you can by leaning on the track record of your team, right? Property manager manages 5,000 units. Lenders underwritten $1 billion, right? You got an SEC attorney, you got a CPA, boom, package. And now you have a lot more credibility. And so what does this negotiation process look like a little bit? Let's talk a little bit more about, we just talked about this before the show here, that you're putting another deal on a contract. And what amazes me is that since 2014, since we've been doing this, people have always complained that a deal can't be done for a different reason, for one reason or another. Like, market's too hot, COVID, interest rates, March too cold, there's blood in the street. Okay, there's always some excuse why people saying, yet for some reason, people are always doing deals. And so they say, well, nothing pencils, right? So what is your observation? And we're getting negotiating here a little bit here. Like, all right, so how do you get a deal to pencil? How do you actually get a deal to the negotiation and you get it under contract?
Okay, so because I have those relationships, I've created those relationships with the deal. First of all, you're sending me those very secret deals. So that is one.
Secret, you mean by off market?
Off-market
I
deals.
like
call it
secret better. I
deals.
like secret deals. That's cool.
Yeah, so they send me those secret deals that nobody is, because almost all the deals I've closed on are off-market deals. So they send me those secret deals. One, I have less competition. So back to relationship, you create those relationship, it gives you good feedback. They will give you good deals. So that is one. So the second thing I also get to do is because I had to get the education. First of all, I had the education from the Michael Blank's community. I had that education. So during my underwriting process, I look for loopholes and I try to use those loopholes to negotiate the deal. So for example, I'm saying in the underwriting stage that there's some repair work that needs to be done, or whatever they communicated as the cap rate is not exactly the cap rate. So I use those things because they actually want to know if you know what you're doing. Sometimes when you throw it at them that this and this and this is off, and you're able to convince them at that, most times they go back to the seller. I've had that happen. They go back to the seller and say, this is what the market is saying. And sometimes they negotiate and they come back and we're all on the same level ground. So I've been able to achieve things that way because of knowledge. The more you know, the more you can negotiate. And I've also been able to negotiate with timing. Okay, you do this. I break things down in my letter of intent. So with timing, I say, okay, if I'm able to put this at so time, I will need this. I actually got a seller to give me a deal below the price he wanted to. With a condition. I said, if at the time we're closing, this property is not up to 95%, then this is the amount you will get. If it's up to, you're able to bring it to that level, then this is what you will get.
Nice.
So that was a negotiation we had during that stage.
A little bonus.
I didn't close on that deal though, but that was what I did for that deal.
One of the things I like about the apartment building is that the sellers typically, especially over 20, 25 units, are more sophisticated. And so it's really a negotiation around numbers and timing, like you're saying. Where the houses, it was like negotiation is like you have like irrational sellers. Like, this has been in my family for 200 years. I want $1 million, right? And there's no reasoning with single family house sellers many times I've found. But with apartment buildings, it really is numbers. It's all numbers. It's cap rate, it's expenses, it's NOI. And so, so when you say, hey, look, I'm looking at the expenses right now, the cap rate is this, it's a very simple math problem. It's actually worth this. And by the way, Mr. Seller, if you don't come on your price, you're not going to sell it because every buyer is going to find the same exact thing. And we have found, and this is what you're telling me, is you educating the seller helps you get deals done. If you show them, you just come back with a price. Oh, I'm going to pay you 4 million. You're like, well, here's why I'm getting 4 million. I'm using these numbers. Now you tell me if I'm doing something wrong here, which you're not. And they run it through their own spreadsheet and they come with $4 million and they want 4.5. And so I thought, yeah.
Yes, I had the opportunity because I was having this back and forth with a broker, and he actually invited me to their office because he wanted to compare your SDA underwriting and theirs. It's a very big brokerage company. I don't want to mention their name.
Ooh.
And yes, we got to that point where we wanted to see where who was doing what and all that. And we
Nice.
found out that they were super aggressive with the deal. But that I created a point. The point was that the deal must pan out before I say yes to it and all that.
So you negotiate here and you finally get a deal done because you finally you educate the seller a little bit, and they
Yep.
take you seriously because if your team you're going to close are like, all right, I'm going to take a chance on this one, let's do this, and they put it on a contract, and now the lawyers, right, another team member negotiates does the purchase agreement. Okay, so now you're under contract. Now we're in the due diligence, right? Due diligence is an important step. And the purpose of due diligence is to uncover things that you may not like so that you can get out of the deal if you discover something that's bad. What are some of the important things to pay attention to in due diligence?
Yeah, so typically I start my due diligence before I start the PSA. So I put in my LOI that I need early access before the execution of the PSA. So what am I checking? First of all, I'm doing the due diligence on the financials first. I want to even know if it's good on paper. That's the first thing I do. The next thing I do is property due diligence. Now I'm checking the heavy capex first before I check the smaller items. Because why am I doing the heavy capex check, due diligence, is I don't want to buy a property that I have to replace the entire roof if it's not what I want to do at that point, or a property where the HVAC, everything is almost out or something. So I want to know what exactly I'm buying before I even get there and all that. So I'm doing the roof, I'm checking my roof, I'm checking the HVAC, I am checking the plumbing, the electrical because of insurance, because I've seen cases where one of my deals, the insurance was super high because of the electrical. The electrical was aluminum, not copper. So the lender was not willing. So these are things I check out for to know exactly, is this the deal I want to do? So after doing that, I also do my title check. We dabbled into one issue because we did not verify the title. The previous owner's parent owned the property, and they did not transfer it properly to their kids. So we had title issues at closing. After closing, it surfaced and all that. So you want to check permits. We also went under contract for a deal that the owner added more units without even getting permits for them and all that. So because of the due diligence stage, we were able to find that out. So I want to check all those things. I want to check them, and environmental stuff. So many things I get to do, but the priority is my financial due diligence, the property due diligence, the market. I want to also check the market. I want to compare my property with others and see what exactly they are doing at every point in time and what I should be doing, or if there's even any rent bump, if there's any way or chances for me to increase my rent.
Now, are you like an electrician, plumber expert, HVAC expert? Are you walking around these things? Like I just see you walking around checking like the plumbing and stuff like that. Or again, is there maybe a team member that's helping you?
Oh, yes. And my experience or my expertise is not in that. So
Oh,
I engage. The first deal I did, I know I engaged an inspector. That was a mistake. I spent a lot of money, but
yeah.
I've gotten a better way of doing it. So what I do is I engage my property management company, and they engage third-party vendors. So I get my property management company to help me with my lease audit. So they are auditing the lease of whatever it is I'm buying, the tenants, they're checking out the tenant profile. Then they are bringing in experts, roof experts. They're bringing in their HVAC experts. They're bringing in their electrical and their plumbing experts. So it's a team of, typically our due diligence, you see like 20 people, 15 people on ground, different people doing different things and all that. But I don't have experience in them in the sense I'm not a professional, but they all do it and we get reports and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, the team is very important. It's kind of like this book called by Dan Sullivan called Who Not How, right? I think it keeps coming up. It's like, well, I don't have to figure out the how part of electrical inspection because I have a who can do that for me, right? I don't need to know the intricacies of a real estate purchase agreement or SEC law because I have a who on the team. But this is a common theme I keep hearing, and this is very important for everyone listening and watching to this. It is all about the team. It is your ability to put together a team to do something that's incredible. And so, and due diligence is again another example of that because you are bringing in a team that's helping you do this. And there's some questions around, oh, do you get access before you sign the PSA? And the answer is yes. Sometimes you can request what she called an early access agreement that gives her access to the files and even to the property so that you can do a faster close. So this is not uncommon. It's a little risky though, because if for some reason you uncover something that you don't like, you may be spending some money you don't get back. But she's leaning a lot on her property manager to help her with that, maybe a general contractor that the property manager brings in. So you're able to do a lot of work up front. And that's really cool. So again, leaning on your team for the due diligence is super important. And then of course there's a final closing, right? So do you guys talk about the closing process? Yeah, what's that like?
So we have a checklist that we go through during our closing process. So our property manager, like the property manager, I can't just stop talking about them. They're so very important. So during our closing process, they are already there and we also are there. And what are we checking or what are we doing at that point? We want to make sure that the property is still at the same occupancy or it has improved because we've seen cases whereby you buy a property and the seller just takes his hands off and you lose almost all the tenants or a large number of tenants and all that. So we want to verify the vacancies in that property. We also want to start moving or transferring the utilities and all that. We also want to be going through our contracts to know, okay, we need to go through the contract with our property manager because it's at that point you start signing those contracts and the lender's contracts and all that. We also want us to double check the tenant. And let me tell you why I'm saying that, because we've seen cases whereby the seller would just put a dummy tenant on the property. Someone, and in the next 2 months, they leave. Once you take over, they just leave and all that. So we want to verify that. We also want to verify the inventory. We bought a property with a shuttle, a vehicle, and the owner forgot that the property owns that vehicle. We almost lost it if we were not on ground at that point. So inventories, we took over things that were supposed to be handed over to us at that time and all that. So these are things we do before we close the deal.
So this is cool. And then do you guys pay yourself an acquisition fee at
Oh,
closing?
yes, of
well,
course.
let's talk about that.
Yeah. So after the entire hard work, that is the reward you get. So that is a very interesting part of it. The acquisition fee is a lot that you can become financially free with it over time. Maybe your first day might be small, your acquisition fee is small, but the more you do it, that alone can make you financially free, because I've seen people go home with 300,000, 350,000, double their annual income and all that. Acquisition fee is just very, very important. And it's something I like.
Yeah, it's really amazing, and I think this really propels people to quit their jobs after their first deal because of the acquisition fee. Gives them runway. Maybe they have a few extra savings. Now they have a year of financial runway, and then they have a pipeline forming. And through the law of the first deal, the second deal is typically in sight, and they quit their job, which is really cool. Now, just to your request, as we close up here, so people watching, listening to this, and again, they've maybe done a flip or have some rental properties and are looking to scale their portfolio, and they're like, apartment buildings is pretty cool. What is your advice to them on kind of some next steps to get into it?
Next step, you can know it all at the beginning. Very important. You just need to take the bold step and get educated. Education will make you go faster than every other person. The more you know about this, the better you can scale and the more you can get the right people. So getting knowledge is very important, and not just getting knowledge, getting a mentor, getting someone that can work with you. Those things are very, very critical. And the last thing I would like to say is give yourself the opportunity to strive. Don't just give up on yourself at the beginning. Just give yourself the opportunity to strive. Very, very important.
This has been awesome. I would really enjoyed jamming with you. So thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It was such a wonderful experience.